You're listening to The Health of Business, where we talk openly and honestly about what it takes to run a healthcare clinic business in BC and Canada today. I'm Danielle Boyd, and I'm glad you're here. Before we get into this week's episode, I have something exciting to share. My new course, The Business of Physio 101, is officially open for registration, and early bird pricing is on until January 15th, 2026. If you are a new grad stepping into private practice, this is the course I wish existed when I started my career. We cover contracts, clinic business operations, pay structures, employee versus independent contractor models, sustainable caseload building, and everything about the business of physio that we were never taught in school. If you want to feel confident, informed, and protected as you move into your career, head to danielleboyd.ca/courses to learn more about the Business of Physio 101. Now, let's dive into the episode. Meg, thank you so much for being here. I'm really pumped to get into this topic. It's unique, like we were just saying. It's a really cool intersection of, a couple really cool, interesting areas. So welcome to the Health of Business. I would love if you could, just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and what you do now.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat today.
Yeah.
So I'm a physiotherapist or physical therapist, depending where you're from, by training. And so is my partner, Neena. So we started Articulate Design and Consulting now just over 5 years ago. And really, it was birthed out of a place of kind of being frustrated with the status quo of healthcare, paramedical, rehab facilities and environments. And so Neena and I have a lot of design experience personally, but we were clinicians first. And when I went out and created my own practice and designed my space, it was really to create something that I felt didn't exist in the market, like really putting design and experiential design at the forefront to enhance the treatment I was providing. I mean, I like to think that I'm a really great clinician, but honestly, the amount of people that would walk into the space and just say, "Oh, I feel better just being here." And truly anecdotally understanding how much the environment matters and how much it can complement or can hinder the service that we're providing, it just really made a lot of sense. And so a colleague reached out as Neena and I kind of behind the scenes were thinking about how this could potentially be an offering of ours. And someone reached out very serendipitously, unbeknownst to them, and said, "Listen, I love the way you designed your space. I know you don't do this, but would you design my clinic?" And I said, "So interesting. It's funny how the universe has a way of kind of picking up that energy, right?" And so we designed our first clinic, trial by fire. It went really, really well. It's actually still one of our favorite places that we did. Shout out to Connective Health. I'll forever be grateful for them uh, being the guinea pig.
Amazing.
And then from there, we thought, okay, this could be like a fun little side hustle. And it's a full-fledged business. This is what I do now. I treat very, very minimally enough to kind of keep my license. We have subcontractors that work for us, and we've designed spaces all over the world. So it just has been a wild adventure, to say the least.
Wow. And in 5 years, that's like a pretty quick trajectory. That's amazing. So clearly you found an area that there's demand and interest.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of designers, architects, what have you out there. But I think what we came to realize is being clinicians and being able to speak the language of clinic owners and truly understanding the nuance of how these spaces need to be designed is really our superpower and what no one else out there that I'm aware of is offering. And so it's just set us up for a lot of success in that way, to really do things in a meaningful and intentional way for these types of businesses.
Yeah. And knowing what a clinician needs in their space is such a unique perspective that, someone who doesn't have that background is going to offer. You've got a really unique perspective. I think that's incredible. Have you always been someone who's been interested in design? Because obviously when you designed your own space, you had kind of a knack for it. Clearly, what's your background in that area leading up to that?
It's really just been, like, a personal passion since I was a kid, and if Neena was here, she'd say the same thing. Like, for example, I'd be 7, 8 years old, and I'd be doing up floor plans. I feel like I can really see a space well, like, I can walk into a room and tell you how it should be laid out, how the space should be utilized. Neena's also insanely creative and, artistic, and I think we're very fulfilled as clinicians, but there was this part of us that was not being tapped into enough, which is this
Mm.
kind of creative force. And so we were really doing a lot of it outside of practice, kind of in our personal lives. I think I've done a dozen renos by now. My husband jokes I would like move every year and redesign a house every year if he let me. So I had a lot of practical experience, as did Neena, and we really just didn't think of it bringing it together, right? Until, it sort of banged us in the head. So, we've kind of just learned from there. We've hired to fill kind of the technical gaps that we don't have and have just kind of learned as we've gone along.
Totally, like, go by feel, figure it out as you go. I
Yeah.
love that. How did you connect with Neena? Did you know her through practice previously? What's your guys' background there together?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. We've known each other, as long as we've been practicing, and we have so many life overlaps, we didn't even realize we went to the same school for our undergraduate, we didn't know. We both have twins the same age. Well, we have kids the same age, my twins are a bit older than her twins, but, like, we sort of
Oh,
bonded
wow.
over that, and there's been all these overlaps that are kinda spooky. But yes, we met as physiotherapists and just always kinda stayed connected and definitely had, like, an energy that brought us together. We're a really good yin and yang. Um, her her strengths really complement my weaknesses and vice versa, so it just works out really well as a partnership, and it's not something I would've put a lot of thought into. I've always worked independently,
Yeah.
so I've since learned that I got really lucky in having a partner, that we complement each other,
Mhm.
and I'm really grateful for that because it was something we just sort of entered and went with, but
Yeah.
hindsight, it's really, really fortunate because I think that's where it can be really, really challenging in business when you have a partner and you get really excited, but you maybe haven't done a lot of deep work to figure out, like, are we really a good fit to be working together in
Yeah.
and out?
Yeah, right, and you hear horror stories of businesses falling apart because of the relationship not being, like,
Mhm.
explored or deepened or, like, you almost have to think of it as like a marriage because you're, like, financially tied to each other, and so there
Totally.
is a certain amount of hard conversations and inner work that have to happen in order for the business to, be successful and grow and do all the wonderful things that it needs to do. That's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
And Nina still practices as well, or is she,
Yes. Neena practices more than I do. She works at University of Toronto, in their, sport med clinic, but
got it.
is also working, and that's where I've had a lot more flexibility because I do have my own practice to kinda scale away
Mm.
from that, and then we've hired as we've needed to fill in gaps, but, I think we'd both say that while this will probably continue to take more and more of our time, neither one of us really wants to give up being a clinician, and again, it's what keeps us relevant in this
Mhm.
space.
Totally, and I think, yeah, like, as you continue to practice and to be clinical, you'll continue to grow as a clinician, which will continue to inform your work in the design space, so I think that is very complementary. How much
Mhm.
are you practicing? Like, what does practice look like for you right now?
Very minimal, like a few hours a week.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really articulate just as needing a lot of my attention, and there's a lot of exciting things on the go, and as I said, I have more flexibility to take that on, and so it's worked really well, and who knows, that balance may ebb and flow as we continue on, but right now this feels like a really good mix.
Oh, that's awesome. It feels like you found a really amazing balance, like, because you obviously you said you're a mom, you have twins, that's, like that's a lot, and so you're obviously balancing, like, your PT career, your design career, being a parent, a partner, like, all these things. How are you finding that? Like, it seems like you found a good balance, but, I'd assume there's probably
Oh.
been a journey to achieving.
No, it is not a good balance at all. Uh, I mean, it's like a tricky word, right? It's just like balls in the air, and it's a daily assessment of what needs the most attention. I think that um, I think that's what's been really interesting, and I think a lot of clinicians and business owners will relate to this, is there is kind of a natural burnout cycle, right? That
Mhm.
when we are working full time as clinicians, it's a lot. It's a lot mentally, it's a lot physically. And I think many of my peers have kind of looked to say, okay, do I want to get more into clinic ownership and run a business and be a little less hands-on with
Yeah.
clients? Is that kind of fill my energy? Is it doing something completely different? And so for me, this has been it kind of hit at the phase in my career where and the age my kids are at and what's going on in our lives where this affords me more flexibility. I can kind of work wherever, whenever, which I really need for my personal life right now.
Yeah.
And it gives me a bit of a break in the way in which I work. So it's not as physical, it's not as analytical, it's a lot more creative. So it's been like a really nice shift for that. However, the flip side to that, just like clinic ownership or anything else where you're not treating as a practicing clinician, there's no end really to the work. There's no like the appointment's done, you do some notes,
Yeah.
you're done.
Yeah.
So it brings with it new challenges,
Mhm.
right? It's a different shift. So, yes, it's more flexible in some regards. It's a lot less flexible in other regards because the to do list never really ends.
Yes.
So, for this phase of life, this is a trade off that makes more sense for me. However, who knows? Like in 5, 10, 15 years, it may flip back where I just want to work, see some clients, call it a day and be done. And so I like the ability to have kind of nestled myself into different career paths that I can potentially kind of move between depending on
Yeah.
what my life needs.
Totally, and lean into whichever one, yeah, exactly, is more pressing in terms of lifestyle. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And you touched on something that, I mean, we kinda talked off camera about this briefly, but, I think a lot of clinicians think that clinic ownership really is the only way they can go in terms of, career options outside of being a clinician, and, I think what you've exposed with your business is that there's actually other options, right? Like you've found this really unique intersection, design and being a clinician. And so I think what you've done is you've exposed other routes for people. And I think a lot of clinicians, myself included, have constantly been trying to find a way to work that doesn't require showing up on site, having appointments, being hands on, exchanging money for time. And like what you've said is being flexible and being able to work wherever, whenever. And yes, that is a double-edged sword because you can be always working everywhere and it never turns off and your brain is constantly spinning. But I really like that you found a way to open up business opportunities that aren't just the traditional either become a clinic owner or be a rock star clinician, right? Like,
Mhm.
are there any other, and I mean, this is kind of just a shot in the dark, but do you have any other ideas or like, do you see any other creative intersections that clinicians might be able to pursue that are not just clinic ownership, and kind of following what you've done?
Totally. I think I say this completely genuinely and people kind of chuckle at it. I honestly feel like everyone should have 2 jobs or
Mm.
like minimum. Maybe not necessarily at the same time, but this idea that like we're meant to be fulfilled for 40 plus years in one way, um, I think is really challenging and becoming a clinician is a really long, hard, expensive road. And so I feel like there's a lot of pressure that if I don't stay exactly in this field or like, you know,
Yeah.
dancing around this field that it was all for naught. I think there's so many ways in which you can be a clinician and either do something completely different. It doesn't even need to be, you could be a graphic designer, you could, I don't know, like maybe you like to build decks, like whatever kind of keeps calling you or something that you would do for free because it interests you, how do you monetize that? And then how do you create the flexibility? Because that is what's really nice about being a clinician. Like you can work 20 hours a week, you can work 60 hours a week, you can work 10 hours a week. And so how do you marry these things so that you feel fulfilled in a different way that's gonna allow you to have a lot more longevity in
Yes.
your career?
Yes, because like you said, it's so easy to burn out. And you made a great point about it's a long, expensive, energetically, financially intensive journey. And so it's like this sunk cost. A lot of people
Mhm.
feel I paid all this money, I'll put all this time and energy into becoming a physiotherapist. Now, to walk away from it seems like a huge shame, right? And so I love that idea of splitting your time or having different areas that you dabble in because I think it really will lend itself well to longevity and to preventing burnout and opening up really unique opportunities like you found yourself in. So I that was great. That's like mic drop. You nailed it.
Well, and to be honest, thank you. To be honest, like mine's definitely related. Like I'm designing clinics, but in another life, I could see myself doing part-time residential design and still being a clinician. Like I don't think the two have to be related, but I feel like we're stuck in a bit of a paradigm where we think they do need to be related. So for me, they are by happenstance, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. And I think we live increasingly in a job market that will be more of a gig economy and where there are so many opportunities to like consult or work as a contractor in different ways
Mhm.
that I just think people should be open-minded to like where they want fulfillment.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer. I want to dive a bit into the actual like mechanics of design and talk about it from that clinical perspective because this is obviously your area of expertise. And I'm curious, have you done like continued training in design, or is it something that's very creative and intuitive for you? I'm curious, like kind of how you've explored that or like pulled that thread for yourself personally.
Yeah, I think I've done this the complete reverse way to what I did to be a clinician. Like to become a PT, it's, you do your undergrad and then you go to school and you do placements and you kind of like keep getting more and more expertise, yet you don't have a lot of hands-on experience. Like you sort of then enter and you're like, okay, now I got to get the hands-on experience. I feel like I've done it backwards of I've gotten a lot of hands-on experience, and then I'm like, "Okay, what do I need to learn to now actually make this happen?" So I've
Right.
reverse engineered it a little bit. I do think I have just a natural eye for it, and particularly spatial orientation. I think so many people are really good aesthetically at designing places.
Mm,
Um, but it's always just been a proclivity to, like, be able to see a space and how to lay it out, and so I've just reverse engineered that of like, "Okay, I need to learn some basic CAD skills, I need to learn," so we've done that to the extent that it makes sense, and then where things get more complicated, we've just subcontracted. So I think it's important for people to give themselves permission that you don't need to learn it all and be a master of everything. There are many, many skills in the design world I do not have. It created some imposter syndrome for a while, and I'm kind of over it at this point because I'm happy to bring on the people who can just do it better
yeah.
under our guidance, and it's worked really well for us.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've probably developed great relationships and subcontractors that you trust, and so that makes that
Mhm.
process a lot easier when you have those relationships established and you know what you're getting into and have, kind of clearer expectations and
Yeah.
outcomes based on experience. So I'm sure that helps a lot with that. That's super cool. It's funny how it's backwards like that. Hey, like, I kind of went through a similar journey after I, ran a business and, got really interested in it. I was like, I should like maybe formalize this. I took like a project management professional and got that designation. And so it's kind of funny how, yeah, you're right, PT, you get all of this training and then you get released out into the wild and you're like, now what? I have zero experience. And so building on your experience and formalizing it and like, putting terminology or putting, just formalizing the process is actually really cool. So, yeah, I can totally relate to that. That's hilarious. Um, Yeah, let's talk a bit about design. So you mentioned your eye for layout, and that's such an important piece of a clinic, right? Like that layout is essential for flow and efficiency and all these things, especially at a time like in this economy when rent is really high. Like these lease prices are massive on clinics or mortgage prices if someone owns. And so having a good eye for that efficiency and that layout is super important. So I'm curious, what overall makes for a good clinical design? Like, what do you look at when you walk into a clinic and feel like what makes it, "This is good. This is, like, efficient. I like it."
Yeah. Oh gosh, so many things, but I think as an overarching answer, I would say that it feels very intentional. And what I mean by
Mm,
that is that every square foot has been thought of in a way where it's either contributing to the experience or contributing to income generation.
mm,
And I think that's an important distinction because a lot of people see it as if I'm not making money in every square footage, then it's not efficient or functional. But you do in a really successful business have to leave room for what's adding to the experience. Uh, and for some, that's like creating more space. And by space, I mean like you may have a bigger reception area because that's important for the demographic that you treat or the clientele. And that's really intentional for that experience to take place there. Um, for others, that's not the case. So it really just depends on what your brand is, who you treat, your staff are. There's no one size fits all, but the idea that like that has been thought of very intentionally and that we're utilizing every bit of the space and it would fit into one of those two categories.
and that's totally something that your physio background will inform. Like that understanding of the population that they're working with or, just like the population, the treatment, the feel of the clinic, the branding, like that's something that's so hard to distill unless you have that background as a physio, so I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm sure you get a lot of questions around, like, maximizing space use. Like, what are some obviously, like, there are those 2 components, so the experience, the feel, that aspect of it, but then, yeah, like, the income generation. What are some ways you look at clinics and helping them maximize their space use?
So, low hanging fruit is like how multifunctional is your space? So, where there's a lot of what I'd call wasted space is when you have a treatment room and it's utilized only, you know, X amount of opening out hours that the clinic is open. So, can I change what treatment tables in there and both a physio, a chiro, or a massage therapist could work in there? Do I have a layout where all those clinicians could work? Then if, that's talking more body treatment, if I'm doing more like consulting where I have maybe a psychotherapist, a dietitian, a naturopath, like where it can be a different type of room, how am I maximizing that? So like really auditing your business of what are the different types of practitioners and are the spaces being utilized by as many that make sense for that modality or that profession. Um, Usually there's a lot of wasted space, admin space.
Mm,
So, big front desks, lots of equipment that's no longer needed in a very digital world, but it's just kind of how things have always been done and people are hesitant to change. But when we start to really dig in a little bit more to the business to say, I don't think you need 3 people up here. I don't think you need this big desk. You don't need this file room. How can we utilize this space in a much more efficient way?
yeah.
So that's like another area for sure. And then it's really understanding where's your bottleneck in your business? Is it hiring clinicians? What have you done for the space to make it a really appealing place to work? Or is it bringing in new clients? So, what are you doing to the space to attract clients? Like, really understanding where there's gaps. Is it in bringing more clinicians in? Is it bringing more clients in? And how am I addressing that through the design?
Yeah, and you're really almost doing a full like consult on the business as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, if having or attracting clinicians is the bottleneck, then yeah, making it attractive for clinicians to work at. Whereas if you have lots of clinicians and that's not the problem, but you're trying to find patients, then yeah, you're probably going to put more attention on that waiting room or having product for sale or having, branding that's pretty and beautiful or whatever, right? So that's so interesting because you have to really think about the business as a whole in that
Yeah.
sense to contribute to the design. That's cool. Yeah.
It's it's funny because most people want kind of a specific or I guess more of a generic answer of like, how do I, you know, lay out my space in the best way possible? But really what it always comes down to, and it frustrates people when I say this, is like you have to know your brand identity.
Yeah.
Doing any design work before you truly understand your brand identity. And I don't mean by brand identity like your logo and your colors. I mean like what's the voice of your brand? What's the avatar of like the type of clinician you're trying to hire, the type of client you're trying to see? Like truly deeply understanding those things about your business will inform all the rest. If you're seeing a geriatric population, well, yes, you're going to need a lot more help up front, space up front. You got to think about the seating, all of these things. If you're seeing like 20 somethings who are super, super digitally literate, you may not even have a front desk. You may
Yeah.
scan a QR code to check in. It's a completely different model. And so there isn't a one size fits all, but doing the deep work to really articulate what your business is, what you want it to be, what the voice, what the personality is, will inform all of this.
That's huge. And, like, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, I'm going, it's so true and not something I mean, I've worked in a solo practice, like rented my 10 by 10 office and, put my table and my desk. So that's all I've ever had in terms of brick and mortar. My business was a telehealth based business. But, when you think about that, like it's not even something I would have thought of in a brick and mortar space. You think you always have a front desk, you have like X amount of chairs and it is this big. And then you have 3 or 4 10 by 10 treatment rooms and a gym. Like that's just
Yeah.
kind of the space that you automatically think of when you think clinic, like
Right.
front desk waiting area, treatment rooms, shared gym space, and then maybe a staff room. But it actually is so different depending on who you're working with. Like if your population is pediatric, then your waiting room's probably going to have some toys and different like things and like make it more bubbly and fun. Whereas you're right, like a geriatric population is going to need more ergonomic and functional, like, maybe a handle to help them get out of the seat. Like it's just so funny how you're right. And not knowing who you're working with, like, yeah, how on earth are you going to design design a space then?
Yeah. And that whole front of office experience is one that I would say putting the most amount of thought into will shape um everything because it's your first impression, right? Of people
Mhm.
walking in. I've said this many times before, so people have probably heard this, but like think about when you go to a restaurant for dinner. As soon as you walk in the door, depending on the lighting, the smells, the music, the decor, like you've already decided if the food is good in a way, right? Like the chef may be okay, but it's still great because the experience is great. Now, think of the opposite. You go into a restaurant, it's like bright fluorescent lights, this floor's sticky, like it needs an update. It feels really dowdy. The food has to be exceptional for you to go back. And so
Yeah.
the whole idea is like, how are you using design to make sure it's enhancing the service you're providing and enhancing the service, particularly for the type of clients you treat? What are ways in which you can really cater to who is walking in that door?
Yeah. What are some like, say, just like a generic sports med orthopedic clinic, like what are some low hanging fruit, like easy things someone can do in that waiting area that help enhance that experience or that first impression?
Yeah, like in any space, we like to tell people like lean in more to what you would do residentially. Like make it
Mm,
feel really comfortable. Like the more you can lean away from clinical, the better. So, what kind of lighting do you have? what kind of seating do you have? We always like to do a mixture of seating. So obviously people are coming in pain and have different
Yeah.
abilities. So, but like having a couch and then maybe two structured chairs and they face each other like a living room with a coffee
Mm,
table between instead of chairs all stacked along a wall where
like
you're
those
just staring at a
sterile doctor's office
yes.
chairs.
Um, you know, have a rug perhaps if it works for your population. Have some like lemon water on a little sidebar. What things feel like someone walks in and they already feel neuroregulated? Like I walk
Mm,
in, maybe my back hurts, maybe it was a rush to get here, but I walk in and like the lighting, the music, the seating, all of that just makes me feel
yeah.
I can take a breath.
Oh,
So that now when you go get them as a clinician, you're probably getting a different person than someone who walks in and it's like harsh lighting and they're sitting in an uncomfortable chair staring at the wall where you've taped posters up or like alerts to like your Christmas hours or whatever it is and it feels so clinical.
yeah.
That's like a different greeting for sure.
Absolutely. And you're so right about that like nervous system regulation piece. We go for treatment to feel better. So part
Mhm.
of that is having a regulated nervous system. And you're so right. Like lighting makes all the difference in the world.
Mhm.
It's wild. Like you can have a fairly sterile office, but if it's like not these gnarly like overhead LED lights, but you have some lamps and so like I think even that alone would be, yeah, and you're right, the lemon
Huge.
water, like there's just some like little tiny lipstick pieces that can go in that can make an absolute world of difference. That's huge. What is your favorite part of a clinic to work on? I'm curious. I mean, obviously we've just talked quite a bit about that
Yeah.
that intro or that like
Yeah.
waiting area, but is that your would you say that's your like favorite part or what's your
100%. 100%. It's where people should spend the most thought. It's where they should spend the most money. And it really should be a representation of your branding. And by branding, I don't mean like a painted wall behind the front desk with your logo. I mean, it embodies your brand. So if the personality of your brand is like really playful, what are you doing to make that space feel playful? If it's very sporty, what are you doing to make, what is the personality? So if someone walks in, it's almost an intangible. They could go and tell a friend and they can articulate the kind of vision of your space without you explaining it to them. And that it
Yeah.
feels bespoke and unique to whatever is down the street and beyond. And coffee shops are really great at doing this, like kind of
Mhm.
like new age coffee shops, right? Like you walk in, some are like super minimal, that's super neat. Some are like really eclectic and bohemian. Like you can walk in and you have like a real flavor for what the brand is about
Mhm.
without it needing to be in your face.
And you
So
know how
yeah.
you feel when you walk in. You can be like, "Oh, it
Yes.
just felt so relaxing. Oh, it felt so funky." Like, "Oh, it felt
Yes.
so hip," right? It's not
Yes.
this like, "Oh, it looked this way." It felt this way.
Great way to put it. Exactly. So how does it feel? So any kind of like common spaces like hallways, washrooms, those kind of areas are really fun to design because that's really where the personality of the brand should come out. Washrooms, I always say like go wild with because it's a room people are spending like only a few minutes, but make it like a real experience. And again, low hanging fruit because most clinics aren't thinking about this. It's almost like an afterthought, the washroom, but almost every single client will visit it. So, like, do some fun wallpaper, do cool tile work, like whatever it is, like make that a space that feels really, really kind of fun.
I
Easy,
love that.
easy. And then usually the treatment rooms, honestly, are the places I keep the most simple. Um, the thing I'd say considering most is lighting in those spaces. So remember, most of your clients are lying on a bed looking up. So if you're building out a
LED
new
in the eyes.
space, there's no light, if you're going to put in recessed lighting, like it should be in the corners of the room, not in the middle. Even better if you can do lighting that's not on the ceiling. So if you're building a new space, like, can I do it on the walls? Can I do like an LED, like integrated light strip along the top of the walls that so again, there's not this like harsh lighting, dimmable lights so you can modulate and control based
Yes.
on what you need. Um, and like it should still feel purposeful. It shouldn't feel like a blank slate, but we like to keep it more neutral again for this idea of it being super multifunctional
Yeah.
and that the practitioner has as much autonomy to make it their own. Do they like bright lighting or do they like dimmer lighting? Um, it not being like too overly designed that it feels challenging to kind of switch over how the room is utilized.
I like that. I like keeping it simple in the treatment room and, yeah, having the, like, personality of the brand everywhere else because, yeah, as a patient, it is nice to walk into a room and not feel overwhelmed. It is
Yeah, and it
really where
feels
the
clean, it feels just organized, everything has a home. You're hiding as much of that, like, clinical or medical equipment as possible, so whether it's, like, through millwork or cupboards, like, everything's just, like, clean, tidy, nice lighting, um, but very neutral so that exactly, if the rest of your clinic has, like, pink in it and people don't like pink, if they're spending 45 minutes in a treatment room, that's not in their face, but you can have those moments elsewhere that really bring out your branding.
Yeah, I really like that actually. Do you have any fun stories of any, like redesigns or startups or anything that I mean, you talked about the very first experience you had, but I'm curious about like a before and after story, like a clinic that had, XYZ, whether it was like a financial outcome or like, a clientele shift or something after one of your designs. I'm curious to hear one of those stories.
Yeah, great question. We're still working on, like, bringing in really good data around the financials. It's there anecdotally, like, we get told it all the time that the investment in design has paid off exponentially within a few
Mhm.
months because often it's like we're creating another income generating space or you're creating an experience that's, like, very Instagrammable, it's word of mouth spreads, like, all these things that just bring in more business because of the way that it's designed. Um, but I think in terms of like some fun examples, so we have this one space we did, and this was a few years ago now, and it was a small practice. It was two partners that were really, really interesting. One's very sporty, played on like national teams. You know, that was kind of her identity. And her partner, was, like, kind of the opposite, like, really into books, really into literature, quieter, and they were, like, coming together to build this business, and they were doing some, like, deep brand work, but, like, really struggling of, like, how do we marry kind of our approach and the way in which we practice when, like, we're very inherently different people, and how do we turn that into a brand? And so we're like, I think we lean in to both because I think it's so important that, especially when you have a smaller practice, if like you're a solopreneur, or maybe you have one other partner, like you're not planning to build out a massive practice, you
Mhm.
have to realize that like you really are the brand. Like what you're trying to do is when people walk in the door, they feel like they know you in a
Mhm.
way. Um, and so what we did is like we created this really cool display in the reception where it was a mix of like books. It almost became like a library for clients. So there was like really interesting books that people could like take one, leave one. Um like the whole place was just this big bookshelf in the front and then it was mixed in with like vintage sports equipment. So it was this idea like it felt like this really eclectic wall and it was just a mix of like fun books and sports equipment and trophies and it felt like a really cozy space. We brought in vintage furniture, like nothing was brand new. And then the signage behind their desk, we had a local artist do, so it was their logo, but if you look closely, within their logo were all these, like, words and little drawings that were, like, really special to them. Like, they had these 2 dogs, so, like, the dogs were in there and, like, different things they've done, but from afar, it just looked like their logo. And
Yeah.
so, as soon as you walk in and again, the lighting felt like you were in someone's home. It was this cool little, like, retro living room setup, old desk, and it was so kind of comforting to walk in, and it felt like you instantly knew who these people were.
Yes.
And so different from, like, most clinics you would design. Still done in a
100%.
professional way, but just really, really, really dialed in to who these two individuals were as clinicians. But then
Yeah.
again, speaking to the last point, like the treatment rooms, really neutral. We painted the ceiling, otherwise white walls, nice clean desks, some storage, but you weren't like inundated with all of this stuff in those rooms. They were really kind
Right.
of like quiet and basic. And then speaking of the washrooms, like they both um maybe it was one of them, I can't quite remember, like really loved giraffes. It was like all these things came up, right? And so in their brand color, we did a giraffe print wallpaper. And like hear this and say like none of these things go together. But it does. It
Yeah.
works and it's all intentional and people will be like, "Oh, cool washroom." Like it totally takes people by surprise and then it creates this touch point where you're like, "Oh yeah, funny story. Love giraffes. It's a giraffe print. It's in our brand color." Like it creates this dialogue that's like really kind of interesting.
100%. And it's like such a talking point, you know? Someone might even go home after their session or like go for dinner with a girlfriend after and be like, "Oh my gosh, I went for physio today. It was amazing. The physio was wonderful. But oh my God, their bathroom was the coolest thing ever." And then that person's going to be like, "I need to go see this bathroom. I'm going to book in," right? Like
Yeah.
that in and of itself is actually like a marketing tool.
Totally, totally. And like speaking to the opposite of that, we did a sports med clinic. These young guys were starting it and they wanted it to feel really like a lifestyle brand. So
Mm,
instead of a front desk, we did a coffee juice bar. And the idea was to like invite people to come bring their laptop, sit and do an hour of work before your appointment, come and
yeah.
sit after. It was meant to be experiential. The idea that it's not just transactional where you come in, receive the service, and leave. This
Yeah.
idea of like, we want to utilize this space in a way where we don't need a formal front desk because, again, they have like a really young demographic where, you know, they can like book themselves in, they can check themselves in, but to be able to like sit and have a place to do some work, to converse. It's also where like the staff would sit. And it worked for that style of business. And we made it super cool. It felt like a coffee shop, really minimal, really clean lines, really modern. But that felt very in line with their brand and what they were looking to create. So again, no two designs are alike. It's really understanding deeply what a brand is and how to then bring that to life in a space.
Wow, that's cool. I love that idea of having the like coffee juice bar. And then, yeah, the staff goes out there and does their charting out there while they are also like integrate. Like, that's actually really cool and very like modern, you know,
Yeah.
the like gig economy, work from
Mhm.
home, you know, online worker, remote worker vibe too. That's, but again, like if that's who they're targeting, that's exactly
Yeah.
it. Like, you nailed it. Do you have any exercises that you have? Clients that you work with go through to really find their brand identity? Like, do you have a, you know, an interview or assessment or like a tool that you use to help your clients work through that?
Um, yes and no. So we have like a really, really in-depth questionnaire we have any new clients do. And it's funny because a lot expect it to be very aesthetic leaning. Like, what colors do you like? What style do you like? And we always tell people, like, making a space look nice, quite easy, and many, many people can do it. What we're
Mhm.
trying to do is deeply understand your business. What are your growth plans? How many practitioners will be in the space? Um, you know, all these questions that really help us really hone in on how do we create the most functional layout. Um, and then if they don't have a lot of deep insight on their brand, we actually refer them to work with somebody. So we have a few people that
Mm.
we refer to because we think, again, it's kind of throwing good money after bad if you create a whole design without having gone through that. So for people who haven't done that with a professional, we usually recommend that they do. And for those who have and have gone through like kind of a more deeper brand exercise in creating their brand, then yes, we're asking a lot of questions around that so that the design is heavily informed
Mm.
by that brand experience. So it's interesting. I mean, I started a business and it was successful, and I literally made my own logo and picked some colors. Like, I did not go through doing a deep brand identity. So it's not that it's necessary for everybody and it's necessary for you to get started. But when people are wanting to open, and I was a solopreneur, but when you're wanting to like open a space that has multiple practitioners and has um a lot of like growth potential or growth plans, I think it's imperative. A
Yeah.
solopreneur, like, you are the brand. So it's really just getting to know the person and really
Yeah.
articulating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool, and I think a lot of people don't, spend, possibly enough time doing that, so you're right, like, if you're gonna go and drop a whole bunch of money on design and a reno, you gotta be certain, you gotta know, you gotta be clear. Yeah, I'm curious, like, obviously you've spoken, like, you've sold me on design when and if I ever have a brick and mortar, I know who I'm hiring, but I'm curious, like, what are the reasons that you would encourage someone to hire a design firm? And I mean, for me, like, you've obviously answered that question and that you help them really identify and know
Yeah.
themselves, know their business, and also, you can help them maximize efficiency and financials. But yeah, any other reasons that you would encourage people to work with a design firm through that process?
Yeah, I think it's just that. I feel like our industry's been very behind in that design has almost felt like a afterthought or a frill. Like, it's like, I don't really need it because I provide a service and that's what people are looking for. I don't need to design it. It doesn't need to look amazing because people are coming me to get good service,
Yeah.
which is fair. That's a true point, and it's why clinics look the way they do and have for so long and been profitable.
Yeah.
However, we are increasingly in an economy where it's very experience driven. People are paying more for an experience than a service. We live in a digital world where people want to take pictures and Instagram it and show their friends and it feel like a novel experience. And so what we're just seeing is that more and more, to be competitive, clinics really need to showcase their space and their place in a way that feels very aligned with their digital brand, their website, their brick and mortar, that there's alignment through all of those and that it feels current and up to date. And that's both for like attracting clients and for attracting clinicians.
Yeah, I think a lot of clinics and clinic owners don't think as much about their branding and their, like, marketing towards hiring clinicians. They focus it so much on on getting clients, but, especially out here in BC, we have a massive shortage of
Do.
clinicians. There's lots of clinics, like, it's a clinician's world. You can pick and choose where you wanna work. So I think, integrating that into your considerations of design, marketing, branding, etcetera, is huge, and I'm not sure, is it the same in Ontario? Like, what does that
100%.
landscape look? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Nina actually has an interesting perspective. She works at U of T in their sport med clinic, and so she has students coming through all the time who are about to be new graduates.
Yeah.
And so many of them are like, I'd rather work in a cool clinic and make less money than to work in like a basement with carpet and no windows and have a bit more cash. So it's just a different generation, it's a different type of clinician, it's a different world, right? And I think these things really need to be considered and they matter.
Yeah.
I think the other point, whether, it's us or any kind of designer, is truly the investment is in how am I optimizing? So how am I optimizing
Mm.
my brand? How am I optimizing the floor plan? How am I optimizing technology? Like, all looking at this kind of 360 to really make the most sense of your commercial space, I think is so important as an investment. Just like you would hire an accountant, just like you may hire a business coach, all these things are about optimizing. And I would say design fits the same into that category. We see a lot of people who rent spaces and they're like, well, there's already walls up and the offices kind of make sense. And I don't want to spend the money to like knock them down and do new construction. And I get it. Like, taking on a new business or, starting fresh feels like a massive, a massive undertaking, and it
Mhm.
doesn't come with a small budget.
Yeah.
However, when you put all this money in and you just sort of settle, if you just spend the money at the beginning
Yeah.
and do it well, it is exponential in your kind of earning potential than going back in
Yeah.
2, 4 years and needing to change it all.
Oh my gosh, totally, right? It's way more expensive to undo it and then redo it than it is just to do it right in the first place. Like,
Exactly.
that's huge. Funny question. What is your ideal size for a treatment room? Like, do you, I mean, I feel like most treatment rooms are like 9 by 10, 10 by 10, 10 by 11. Like, they're kind of that. Is that where you would typically put a treatment room or what's like the
Yep.
best treatment room size?
I would phrase it more as like I would never go below 9 by 9. So anything greater than that is awesome, and again, really understanding your demographic. Sometimes the space so it's interesting, like, not all spaces are created equal, right? When people are going to lease a space, you can have 1,000 square feet over here and 1,000 square feet over here, and one you can optimize really well based on, like, the width of it. So this is gonna sound really specific, but the width of a space is really important because if you think of, like, you're gonna have a hallway and, like, a bank of treatment rooms, that's kind of like a standard setup for if it's wider, then sometimes you're just left with space you don't need. So it
Right.
makes for either a wider hallway or a bigger treatment room that's not necessarily needed. So unless you're going with like a really wide clinic where you can do treatment rooms on either side and a center hall, you actually want to like look for spaces where, yes, if I need a 10 by 10 room and then I want like 4 or 5 foot wide hallway, that's the dimensions that I'm looking for in
Right.
a space. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, no, that's super interesting because yeah, like a lot of these things are so important right from the get-go. Like before you even sign your lease, like what are you looking
Mhm.
for when you find this commercial space? So that's super interesting. And obviously a lot of them have kind of that shared gym or, whatever
Yep.
open space area. But yeah, like you're right. Sometimes the rooms are almost too big and it's just a waste of space. And now you're paying for square footage that's not being utilized.
Right. So it's kind of looking a lot of clients we work with, like we do their floor plan before they've even signed the lease. Some people don't like doing that. So like, well, I'm not putting any money into this until I've signed a lease. And we're like, that's fine, but you can just look at it as a pretty cheap investment that may save you a lot. So, like, considering things like, am I gonna need to move plumbing? Is plumbing in the right spot for where I would need a washroom?
Mm,
Do I need sinks in my treatment rooms, depending on the type of practitioners you have? Am I gonna need to, like, put in a new sprinkler system or HVAC? Is the landlord covering that? Am I? What's the flooring like? All these costs that are actually your most expensive costs
yeah.
tend to be the thing that are overlooked
Yeah.
until you've signed a lease and you're like, "Huh, I can't have
Right.
a washroom where it is. Oh, I need to put in a whole new sprinkler system. These are like tens of thousands of dollars. And so having somebody audit the space, if that's not something that you're capable of doing, is a small investment that can go a long way of like, is this really going to make sense? Can I do the amount of treatment rooms I need to make it profitable? You
Yeah.
know, looking at all those factors.
Totally. So you almost are providing someone with a blueprint for what to look for when they're shopping around for their commercial space instead of being like working backwards and designing based off something that maybe isn't the best functional layout. You're saying, I've got, these are the two places the bathroom could go. This is what I'm looking for in my commercial space. Now off I go versus, yeah, like having to break it down and move things and like invest way more. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's
Yeah, and often how we'll work it is we'll say when you've narrowed it down to a space or 1 or 2 spaces, then we can come in and we will lay those out. And then you have
mm,
work from, you have something to negotiate from. It's not just an empty space that you're like, "I think it works." Or people will say, "Oh, I love the location. It's amazing."
yeah.
Great. But then there may be a lot of other issues. And so it's just something to think about. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have professional help, but
Mhm.
if you can just go through that exercise of how would I lay this out and does it even make sense or am I paying for square footage that I can't utilize?
Totally. Yeah, or am I having to do this massive, like, yeah, sprinkler, plumbing, HVAC, reno change up to make it functional in the way like, and I think a lot of people get attached to spaces and locations, and then that ends up being more expensive because they're not willing to, look outside of a certain location or, a
Yeah.
specific spot. So, I'm sure
Mm.
you've seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like, it's important for people to know being a clinic owner is like one of the um safest, securest businesses for a landlord. They want you in the space and you have to understand your negotiating power. It's not created equal. Like if you're like, but there's another bid on the space. Well, the other bid could be like a novelty candy shop. Like that is not the same kind of power of like having a clinic, like medical spaces, paramedical, rehab, that all is like class A client. The landlord wants you in the space. And so I want people to know that because I want them to be more confident in their negotiations of you are a stable, secure business, landlords love you. So use that to your advantage.
Very good to know. Did not know that. Yeah, great. That's, we're gonna clip that one and put that one on Instagram.
Please do.
Where do you see like, what are some of the biggest trends in design that you see right now? Like, and I'm sure there's some that you don't like. I'm sure there's some that you do. Like, what are kind of the trends and like what direction do you see the design of wellness space going into? What's the future look like there?
Tech. The trends are how can we lean into how we're utilizing it? I mean, AI is like the biggest
Yeah.
buzzword out there. That's part of it, but more so, um, real kind of forward thinking clinic owners are leaning into how am I utilizing the technology that currently exists, has been proven and works really well to optimize my not only my business, but my floor plan, all of that.
Mhm.
So, do I need admin help in clinic or is that a virtual assistant that
Yeah.
is offsite?
Yeah.
How are people booking? How are people paying? Those kinds of things. And like really the more tech driven solutions are allowing you to optimize square footage in a
Mhm.
much more meaningful way. So that's definitely a trend that's only going to continue. And I think there's been a lot of hesitancy around it. And we're seeing that kind of tipping point where people are like, okay, this isn't going away. People are becoming more um, familiar with it. So we feel comfortable kind of making some changes.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true, and I mean, even just something like the QR code to check in versus having someone at the front desk, I'd imagine that's a huge amount of space saved if you can have an offsite admin and just have that QR code or having, your practitioners run the credit card or the direct billing at the end of the session, right? Like now you've saved a ton in space and yeah, you can use it in a different way. So that's yeah, I tech is
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm curious now to kind of pivot into like the structure of the business. Now you work with Nina, you guys work together. How did you structure the business? Have you I assume you've incorporated it. Like how did you make that work?
Oh man, such a learning curve. Like if I make anyone feel confident that you just start and you'll figure it out, please believe me because that's exactly what we've done. It's laughable, like, when we first like, what our invoices look like, what, you know, our our bank setup, like, it's been a process to really kinda hone in and learn this stuff and a huge learning curve. Yes, we are incorporated. Yes, we are partners. We are 50-50 in terms of our, like, decision making and kind of voting power within our corporation, but we do
Mhm.
have different splits because of the time that we put into the business. So that's kind of our setup, and it's flexible, and we talk about it quite often, as we discussed at the top of this podcast, right? Of things are always potentially changing, and we want to be able to have that flexibility if she takes
Yeah.
on more or if I take on less. So, it's just constant dialogue for sure.
And that's huge. You have to be in communication with business partners. Absolutely. So that's really cool. And I assume, like you said, like you're very complementary to each other. So how do you like what part of the work do you take on more and what does she take on more?
Yeah. So Nina does. more of our like finances behind the scene. She's more like our CFO. Um, that's more what she does. And again, it suits what her strengths are
Mm,
and also just in terms of the time. So I have a lot more flexibility to be client facing. I
mm,
take on a lot more of our meetings. I do a lot more of our biz development um, because I have more flexibility in that time.
yeah.
She's just a more organized person. I'm definitely more the like scattered creative. Uh, so that works really, really well for us. Um, and then we each take discovery calls and then we allocate projects where one of us would be a project lead, but
Mm,
we're both completely in communication and aligned on every single project. So there's not a project where it doesn't have both of our fingerprints,
yeah.
but one of us is the lead on it and we manage the meetings and we manage the deliverables. We manage whoever we're working with from like a subcontracting standpoint to like get deliverables. But we definitely are in constant talks. We are big fans of like voice memos. We
Yes.
probably 20 a day. Like it's hilarious. My kids have just kind of learned that if I'm talking to a wall, like I'm just recording a voice note for Nina and she and vice versa. So like this is our language and it works.
I love it. That's how I actually do a lot of my consulting too, like, because I do a lot of my consulting's really around compliance and regulation and structure and corporate permits and all that fun, unsexy stuff, and
Yeah.
I do a lot of that with my clients, like, I'll voice note them. If they have a question, I'll voice note them back, like, instead of
Yeah.
having a,
Yeah.
hour-long face-to-face, sometimes it's so much easier just to go on a walk and voice note and, like, have a chat back and forth and do it that way, so yeah, big fan.
Yeah.
How do
I think
clients work with
time
you?
and space to think. Sorry, 1 second about the voice note, which I think is like an important point to make,
Yeah.
is oftentimes we'll schedule meetings, but a lot of our work requires a bit of digestion
Yeah.
and a thoughtful response. So what we've just come to love about voice notes, you don't need to structure like that call, but in terms of having like conversations about a business or a client, I do think it's really respectful in that it gives somebody the time and space to listen to it, think, and give a thoughtful response. And it often, when you're having a phone conversation or a meeting, you feel the need to like instantly respond, and it's not always the best response. So just it works
Yeah.
really well from like a business partner perspective.
Yeah, I love that. The metabolizing and the digestion of the information, especially when you're making big decisions. Like design decisions are really big and even compliance decisions are really big too, right? So it's like it does take a moment to understand and then maybe you want to do some research or like, put together a design board or whatever that looks like and then come back
Yeah.
to it. So I like letting it breathe. I think that's really beautiful. How do you structure your packages with clients? Like do you have more of like a retainer? Do you charge them hourly? Is it like a project fee? How do you do that? Is it different?
Yeah. So again, it's come a long way. I only say this because I think people often look at like a polished business, and I would not even call ours polished by any stretch, but it's come a long way. But I cannot emphasize how crude this all was when we began. So I need people to know that. We have had multiple iterations, and really we've landed in a spot from enough experience where I think our offering offers the most to the client and makes the most sense for how we work. So, our primary offering, and when I say primary, it's like 95% of our clients,
Mm,
we do what's called a design package. And so that is one price. So the client knows upfront what they're paying,
yeah.
and it includes taking them from that initial questionnaire right through the whole design process to the deliverables of they've agreed upon like the design we've come up with. We've had calls, we've had chats, we've done up renderings. All of that's gone back and forth. Yes, we're happy with it. We provide all the deliverables and send that off to them. And that concludes the design package.
Mm,
Should they need our help beyond that? So now they're building out the space or doing the renos and like, oh, something came up, we need to pivot or whatever it may be. If they require our help, then we bill hourly for
yeah.
that. And it gives people the flexibility of many are like, listen, once I have a plan, I'm actually quite comfortable like utilizing it like a blueprint, but I can kind of make changes and I understand the vision, so I'm good with that.
Mhm.
Other people are like, "Great, glad we have a design plan. I need you, like, to hold my hand right through till the end." So, that second part really gives people the flexibility based on how comfortable they are to execute or not.
Right. Right.
Um, and it allows us to, like, provide a pricing structure where they know they're gonna get to the point of a design they're really happy with for this amount of money.
Yeah.
So and we used to do more like, people would say, "Well, can we just, like, consult with you? Like, we're not really sure what to do with lighting or colors." And we used to do a bit more of that, like, kinda à la carte design. But in all honesty, it really doesn't work for either party that well. And the reason being is that our our real superpower is in, like, understanding
Mm.
deeply business and coming up with, like, a really holistic design that embodies all the things we've just spoken about. A
Yeah.
brand experience, the functionality, the efficiencies, kind of the client journey, the clinician journey, all of that. And so when we're just pulled in to be like, "What lights would you pick?" Or, "Help me with paint colors," it became really challenging to just lean weigh in on that. And so
Yeah.
and really people can, like, hire any designer to help with those kinds of little decisions. And so we've
Yeah.
really just kind of moved away from that. Um, the one other thing I would say is to our previous point, there are clients where they're like, "Listen, I'm starting a business. I'm narrowing it down to a few spaces. Can you help me with, like, I don't know which space to pick?"
Yeah.
And so those clients will start with early where they'll pay a retainer, we'll lay out a potential space, and then should they then go through and lease that space and they want us to design it, we just,
Mm.
subtract that retainer from the design package. So that's, like, kind of like a few people start with us there, and honestly, that's the best case for clinic owners and for us, 'cause it gives us time and space to, like, really help them lay it out, give them talking points when they're negotiating,
Yeah.
for their lease. Um, and we're not kinda coming in where they're like, "I've leased a space. I get the keys in 10 days. I need it."
Ready, set, go.
Yeah. So so that's kind of our model, and like I said, it's gone through many iterations and evolutions, but that's where
Yeah.
we've landed, and it feels good, and it allows us to work with clients all over the world because we can work virtually. We're not needing to be on the ground for execution, and it
Yeah.
allows to have, like, a really solid plan that they feel good about.
So I guess in this model, you create the design, give them the blueprints, the deliverables, and then they go and hire the construction teams and everything beyond that. Is there ever a role where you're the project manager and then subcontract that out and like manage the construction phase, or you're just design deliverables and then they go out and find their team?
Yeah, there's a lot of projects we've worked, like, hand in hand with the, GC team or what have you, but we are very aligned and clear that we wanna keep those things separate
Mm.
because it benefits the client the most. It gives them the most flexibility of, like, we're doing design, like, they may have a brother who's a contractor or,
Right.
you know and they're priced separately, and there's no, like, we're taking a cut of their fees.
Yeah.
You start to go, like, the design build way. In order for that to make sense financially, you're paying a lot more because now you've got the designer needing to oversee the
Yeah.
GC, and there's just more fees involved. And so, ultimately, we're clinicians, we're trying to provide something that is, an elevated experience.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be for everybody, but at the same point, we understand that this is an industry where there's not oodles and oodles of, money just floating around. And so how do we provide you know, um, a really elevated service, but do it in a way that it's digestible for many clinic owners?
Yeah, especially in that like capital intense startup phase. That's huge. How are people finding you typically? Like, is it mostly word of mouth or like what's your marketing strategy approach?
We have zero strategy. A lot better at this, but honestly, we've been as busy as we've been able to manage. I think it's word of mouth. I think
Yeah.
it's um, like through some collaborations we've done through Instagram. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what it's like. It's a pretty small, we were talking about this before the podcast of like, it's a
Yeah.
small world. Clinicians know other clinicians. And
Yeah.
I think part of it is like no one else is in this space doing exactly what we do. And so when people are going to build out a clinic space, they think, okay, I can go to a commercial design firm, I can go to an architect, or hey, wait, there's these clinic designers. And so
Yeah.
people have found us that way.
That's huge. That's I like you're right. So much of this is word of mouth and yeah, it's a small community even though we're on opposite sides of the country, it's still a very small community across the country.
Totally.
Um I love all of this. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's about to start a clinic, just like in terms of encouragement and they're getting this huge sticker shock of like renovation, design, lease signage, like basically putting their mortgage on the line to do this. Like, what's one piece of like encouragement or advice you would give them through that process?
Yeah. It's, I feels like this, I feel so passionate about this crop of person, like the really visionary entrepreneur who wants to create something and knows they have something to offer the world and they're just like it's scary, right? It's scary to jump in, where to start. I'd say there's many pathways, and so there's not one answer. We work with a lot of clients where they go big from the get-go. They're like, "Listen, I know I'm gonna build something big," and they take out a big loan and they do it well right from the get-go. And that takes a lot more risk and it takes a lot more courage. Um, and there's a lot of success in that. And for other people, like, that's not for them. That's way too much to bite off, and so it's like, I'm gonna just start me on my own and rent a
Mhm.
room, and we'll see where it goes from there, which is also amazing. That's how I started. Um, and so it doesn't mean that those pathways won't maybe all lead to the same space, but I think it's just knowing who you are, the type of really understanding, like, the type of business you're wanting to build, what
Mhm.
you really want out of it. Again, like understanding your identity, your brand identity, and then working in alignment with that.
Mhm.
And that can look, you know, very different for different people. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it should feel really good for what you're ready for and what you want to do. And you just jump in and you'll learn it. Like I've said it many times on this chat, you'll figure it out as you go along. Don't wait for all the pieces to be in place.
Yeah. Yeah. If you wait for perfection before you start, you'll never start. You got to jump in. What is it? Jump off the cliff and build the parachute on the way down.
Yeah, and I think just knowing your like, I always knew I was never gonna manage a clinic. Like, and even in this business, I don't want to manage people. I wanna be the one doing the work. I wanted to be the clinician. I didn't wanna be a clinic manager. I just knew that. And so when I built my space, it was for me, myself, and I. When we built this business, it was like we'll subcontract for more of the technical aspects, but Nina and I will have our handprint now and forevermore on every design
Yeah.
because that's what we love to do. That's what brings us joy. It's not in running the business. Other people are different. They're like, I love running a business. I'm going to build out a big business and I'm going to have 30 locations in 10
Yeah.
years. And that's an alignment with them. And so then you build to that vision, build to what you want. So I don't know.
I love that. That really fits in with the last question that I ask everyone, which is what is a healthy business to you?
I think it's just that it feels exciting to go to it. It feels exciting to like go to work and that the work you're doing in that business, you're the best suited for.
Mm.
So I could learn um the ins and outs of AutoCAD. I could learn the ins and outs of I could go back to school to become a designer. it's not necessary. I'd rather hire for that. I like working with clients. I like using my clinical brain of how I would lay out a space. Like, these are my strengths. This is what I get lost in the work, and the hours just go by and I don't even notice. So how do I spend as much time as possible doing that kind of work? And I think just knowing what you love, what you bring to the table, and finding out how can I do them, maximize that, and how do I find people for the rest of it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Make it
I
there.
could literally keep talking to you forever. This is so fascinating and interesting, and you speak so well. So thank you. Any other like last pieces you want to share before we share where people can find you and how they can work with you?
I don't think so. You were wonderful at asking questions. Great
I
input.
thoroughly enjoyed this. Oh my gosh. I'm like very fascinated, and part of me is like I just want to open a brick and mortar to go through this process, but so how can people find you online? How can they work with you? Yeah, where do you live
Yeah.
online?
The best way to find us is our website, articulatedesignco.com. You can see our gallery of projects there, portfolio, and you can contact us through the contact form there. You can also find us on Instagram at Articulate Design Co. Those are the two main ways. Any other channel, we are not. We have gone defunct. Yes, we've stuck to our lane.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
too many channels to keep track of. I hear you. I get that. Meg, thank you so much. That was brilliant. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope to do it again sometime in the near future. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
That's it for this episode of The Health of Business. If you're navigating any of these challenges in your own clinic, know that you're not alone. If you're interested in working together on any of these challenges in your business, head to danielleboyd.ca to learn more about my consulting offerings and to get in touch. Catch you next time on The Health of Business.